As the sun begins to set on the plains of the Midwest, we welcome everybody here tonight to the Flatout Racing Network's coverage of playoff race number 2 for the MSRA Reaper Speedlab Truck Series. Here this evening at the Kansas Speedway, Seth Cole alongside of Kyle Lawrence, and we talked about this last week, Kyle, that in this round you had Darlington last week, you got Bristol Dirt on the horizon. This seems to be the one track of the three that you have a little bit more control over your destiny, I think.
Right here at Kansas, I'm considering this track kind of like the center of the hurricane. We were at Darlington last week, and next week you mentioned we go to Bristol Dirt. So this is the calm right now. This is very calm. We're right in the center of the storm. So these drivers need to do the best they can on this in particular track where there's not going to be as much mayhem and they have a better shot of getting a good finish without getting damage to their machines.
And of course, that's important as well for quite a number of our playoff contenders. Many of them struggled last week. We saw Braxton DeWeese finish in the garage area. Christopher Hill, he spent the last 30 some odd laps on pit road. Chuck Waldrop had issues. It's making things very interesting around that cut line as to once we get to the end of these playoffs to that season finale, who are going to be our final four. But a couple of drivers in the field here tonight after the hardships at the Lady in Black trying to gain back those points that they lost.
This is, like I said, this is a good track to really try to get as many points as you possibly can and just stay out of trouble. You were talking about the cut line. The cut line coming into tonight is very close. Only 1 point separates fourth and fifth in the standings, that being Braxton, Deweese, and Chuck Waldrop. And it might be a battle up until the last race for that final spot of the championship.
And again, we've already talked about this when the playoffs began last week. It's not a win in your in system. It's whichever 4 drivers of the 7 playoff contenders accumulate the most points by the season finale, they will end up battling for the championship. Well, 2 drivers that did really well last week, finishing in first and second, the eventual winner Andrew Navarro, runner-up finisher Boyd Hogan, they got some really good points, but neither one of them are in the field here tonight.
Yeah, very interesting call. But they do have a decent gap, and they have performed throughout the season, so they should still be able to get into that championship 4. But very peculiar not to see those drivers here for tonight's event at Kansas, a track where I could see them really succeeding, getting as many points as possible and maxing out points, but maybe for another day.
We saw last week a dominating performance by Andrew Navarro. Started on the pole position, led the most laps, went on to win the race. We'll see if we're going to have a sense of deja vu here tonight as OSN Racing's representative Billy Fitzgerald was fastest in practice and captures the pole position for tonight's 150 lapper. He's alongside of Dylan Canova. OSN Racing with a few drivers in the field here tonight. The 12 of David Santini, the 95 of Evan Longacre also in the field this evening. But it kind of seemed like here tonight when I was watching these guys making laps, there's a lot of speed in this racetrack, and I feel like as we draw closer into nighttime conditions and the track continues to cool, these trucks are just going to continue to increase in speed.
Yeah, you're going to see that speed increase. You're also going to see these drivers really trying to figure out where they're fast at, where at in the run. But here comes the pace truck down pit lane. We're going to take the green flag for 150 laps here at Kansas Speedway here. Should be a fun one. A good start from both our front row starters here.
Yeah, nice little jump there by the 47 of Dylan Canova. Stays even with Fitzgerald going through turn 1. We'll see if the inside gets the early advantage, and indeed it will through the center of the corner. Canova thought about tucking in line, but I think he got too good a run. Takes it back to the top, down the back straightaway.
Good battle to start this race for the race lead between these two drivers.
Oh, no! Fitzgerald! Right in front of the field! You got Longacre that was in that. Shin got a piece. Christopher Hill as well.
I don't think we've had something like that happen this season yet in Reaper Speedlabs. An initial wreck right there at the beginning of the field right there. And these fields are fairly small here in the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series. That took out almost the whole field right there, Seth.
Wesley Jeanette also in the 74. At least 5 drivers involved. Heavy damage on the 74, the 99. Looked like a lot of right side damage on the 95 of Longacre. Yeah, we have not seen. We've had what the last 3 or 4 races where we've only seen maybe one caution in that span of time. Maybe the earliest caution we've seen in a long, long time here, and that's just so unfortunate right out of the gate. Most drivers didn't even get 5 laps into this run. They're already going to have to deal with damage for the remainder of this long race.
And one driver I would like to note who just barely got through that, the driver of the number 7 coming into this race, 5th in the championship, one of the few drivers who got out of there without any damage, Chuck Waldrop, could possibly be a really good day for him at this point.
What was it they said in Days of Thunder? Loose is fast and on the edge of out of control. Obviously, if we went to a long run, these trucks were going to trend tight. Just wondering if maybe that 5 truck was loosened up a little too much here for the early going. I mean, he had no warning when that thing just snapped out from underneath him going into turn 3.
Yeah, this has been a fairly clean season here in the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series. The last time I could remember an accident quite like that happening, I think it was at Atlanta at the very beginning of the season, one of the first races of the season. I think a lap car was involved, if I'm not mistaken, involving Kenny Brady and amongst a couple other drivers. A big accident in 3 and 4, but very surprising and a very heavy hit to this field early on in the running here at Kansas Speedway. 3 laps in, and there's pretty much 3 drivers who look clean.
Matt Knight did not get contact from the wreck, but he did pancake the right side, kind of using the outside safer barrier to slow his truck down. You talked about Chuck Waldrop getting through. Let's go on board with the driver of the 7, see what he saw out the windshield. Very lucky he was able to get that thing down to the apron, because it's a pretty abrupt transition there from the banking of turn 4 down to the apron. Very lucky he was able to keep that thing from solo spinning around in that avoidance.
Driving down there, it kind of looked like he was taking the Roval turn at the Charlotte Roval when you go left and you turn right and you get back on track. Just kind of seemed like what he was almost doing there, Chuck Waldrop, and able to just barely get through that accident. The number 7 took his time getting through the accident, so he didn't get into anybody or spin the car out. And a great job from that number 7 machine, and that could possibly be the difference between him being in the championship and not, because Braxton DeWeese, he's not in the field here tonight, so that could be a lot of points for the number 7 machine.
That last replay was on board with Christopher Hill in the 99, who has taken his race car back behind the wall. Wesley Jeanette has done the same. Evan Longacre sits on pit road getting damage repaired. Same for Robert Shin. And 2 trucks back out on the racetrack, albeit a lap down. Matt Knight and Billy Fitzgerald. So it's just Canova, Santini, and Waldrop on the lead lap here for this restart, coming to lap 5.
All of a sudden, the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series has become the end of the movie Cars. We just got 3 vehicles battling out here for a victory possibly here today. Who will get the job done? The 47 and the 12, we haven't really seen, I don't think we've seen them make a start yet this season. Canova and Santini, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they've made a start yet this season. And then
not in a race that we've broadcasted for Santini. I'm not certain about Canova. I believe Santini made a road course start earlier on this season. And of course, he's no stranger to our screens. Back when the Flatout Racing Network covered the Rapid Fire Pizza National Series, David Santini was always duking it out for wins with his then teammate Logan Helton. But I believe this is the first time here in the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series that we're actually seeing Santini in a broadcasted race here on FRN.
Well, Santini's putting the pressure on Canova here in the early laps. He's right there within 2 truck lengths. He came really close to getting into his bumper in 3 and 4. It looks like he's just taking it really easy on those tires and just getting the good run off the corners. The driver of that number 12, maybe even using some draft from the 47, maybe having him drag him around the racetrack right now.
Now, we mentioned about Robert Shin still on pit road. A big reason why I think he would try and at least get back out there is at this point in time, looks like he would finish no worse than 6th. If he can maybe have another couple of drivers run into issues, leapfrog them up to 5th, Remember, he didn't start last week at Darlington, so he lost a ton of points in that regard, but we've already documented the fact that now Christopher Hill, back-to-back poor performances, Braxton DeWeese not in the field, and he was down there around the cut line. An opportunity for Robert Shin to get himself right back into the championship picture by the time we get to Bristol Dirt next week. That is, if he can get back out on the racetrack and maybe pick up another position or two.
Yeah, Shin's going to need to get back on the track quick and maybe even have some help, have maybe Fitzgerald or Matt Knight exit the race, maybe even an issue with these leaders possibly if they get into a big battle, because he needs to make up a lot of points. Christopher Hill is third in points, and he's a lot of points back of him. He can catch up to DeWeese, but he's still behind Waldrop, who's running in the third position. So it's going to be very difficult for Shin to make his way into that final four. But if he wants to do it, he's going to have to try to get those repairs done as quick as possible.
L continues for the race lead. There's another battle going on right now, and that is the battle for the free pass position. Mention the fact that only 3 trucks on the lead lap. You've got Matt Knight trying to hold off pole sitter Billy Fitzgerald for being the first truck 1 lap down. One thing we didn't even get a chance to be able to document is the stage caution here tonight. A little bit longer than we're used to. We won't see the stage yellow fly until around lap 60. So for those 2 trucks in particular, the 33 and the 5, they may be racing towards that next checkered flag to see which one of the 2 of them is going to be joining Canova, Santini, and Waldrop back on the lead lap.
Yeah, those 2 are kind of in their own little mini race at this point, a 60-lap dash, I guess you could say, to try to get that lucky dog, both of them with a decent amount of damage. So even if they do get back onto the lead lap, I don't think they're going to be competitive unless they pull some sort of crazy strategy, one of them. I think it's going to be between these 3 drivers. Waldrop's kind of fallen back a little bit of the 47 and the 12.
Riding on board with David Santini, looking ahead to race leader Dylan Canova. See him every now and then kind of run a different line. There you see Canova to the apron. Santini will stay up above the white line. See about their entries into turn 1. Santini, high, wide, and handsome there, almost completely to the third groove, whereas Canova decided to hook the bottom. Let's see what happens off corner X. It looked like Santini got a little bit better of a run, but that 47 was really good from the center of the corner up. Just let it kind of yaw out to the safer barrier and got some really good straightaway speed to keep Santini in his rearview mirror for the time being.
This is what I was talking about right before we went green. You're going to see drivers kind of searching around and finding lanes. And this is kind of what Santini's doing right now, is kind of what I do at Kansas. After maybe 10 or 15 laps, I begin to move to that third lane. The third lane just has a lot of speed the farther you get into the run. The 12 seems like he's not quite ready to make that move to the high side and has moved back down to the inside. But we're going to be seeing that. We're going to see Waldrop move around. We're probably going to see the 47 of Canova moving around. And I'm also concerned about Canova's tires. He's pushing it a little bit. And I know going down on that apron doesn't seem like a lot, but he's going down on that apron near the grass every lap on the front straightaway, and that's going to hurt your tires as well.
Yeah, and of course, we saw last week at Darlington a lot of tire strategy games being played there, so much so that on green flag runs, we saw some drivers elect to make 2 pit stops in the span that other drivers elected to make only 1. I mean, what side of the spectrum are we looking at as far as tires here at Kansas? I mean, we know that obviously any track you go to, it's abrasive on the Goodyears, but do the nighttime conditions kind of maybe extend the tire run here tonight at Kansas than it normally would if we were racing during the day?
I would say so, because your tires aren't going to heat up as much. The track temperature is a lot cooler, so I feel like your tires could last a little bit longer. I'm not saying you're going to get 10 or 15 more laps out of your tires, but you might have a little more speed at the end of the run.
What I'm noticing here is Canova's truck looking really loose from the center of the corner off. Goes way up towards that outside wall off of turn 2 and saw a little wiggle out of it right there through 3 and 4. So even though he's out in front in clean air with what would seem like optimal downforce, it looks like even he's not all that steady going through the corners. So we may not be done with a driver spinning from the race lead, depending on just how bad that loose condition gets.
Yeah, I've been watching Canova, and it's been around maybe 6 or 7 laps. Almost every corner, that right rear is just stepping out just a little bit in the center of the corner, like you mentioned, Seth, and I'm concerned for his right rear. It's probably really tearing up that right rear, and I had a bad experience with that once in iRacing officials. I'll never do it again. I was tearing up my right rear, getting loose throughout the run, but I had so much speed and I was flying past everybody. But then when I got past everybody, all of a sudden my car was wicked loose and just wanted to spin out because of that right rear being so worn out. I ended up giving back all those spots that I had gained and almost went a lap down. So it's something we're going to have to watch out for here on this run.
Watch the bottom left of your screen there, the hand motion on the steering wheels. We're on board with race leader Dylan Canova, and you can just see you can even see with that red tape there in the center of the steering wheel how much turning back to the right there is. We'll see here through 3 and 4 again. Last time by, he got really loose and was trying to gather it back up. Yeah, you can see right there, turning the wheel back to the right, trying to save the back end of the truck from coming out from underneath him. Santini, when we were on board with him, didn't look like he was fighting as much of a loose condition, and a couple of things could come into play for that. One, he could have his truck set up for the long run a little bit better than Dylan Canova. The other thing, too, is he's getting a little bit of aero push running in the draft of the 47, and that might be helping a possible loose condition. Just kind of cancel that out. Santini's actually backed off here. Well, either he's backed off or Canova's kept going. Santini might be in tire save mode.
That's what I would think. I would think at this point you'd try to maybe save your tires, especially when you see Canova driving as hard as he is. He's really working that wheel pretty hard, jumping down to the apron. That right rear keeps on jumping out. At this point, Santini must be seeing that and probably backing it down. At least that's what I would do in that situation, because there's no point in trying to force yourself past a guy in that situation.
There's Chuck Waldrop in the 7 truck right now in the 3rd position. Last truck on the lead lap. We already documented coming into this race, first driver outside of the cut line for the Final 4. He was 1 point back of Braxton DeWeese coming into this race. He was, I believe, only 24 points behind Christopher Hill. I don't think he'll gain that many points on the 99, even though Hill is back in the garage area, but he'll gain some ground there. So it looks like at least heading into next week, it's going to be DeWeese versus Waldrop for that final spot inside of the Final 4. Question is, what is the points gap going to be? And Robert Shin has returned to the track. We saw about 5 minutes ago him get put another lap down, but very important, he has returned back onto the racing surface, so he will at least bypass Richard Malugani in the playoff standings, so gain some ground on Braxton DeWeese here tonight, but he'll probably still be slotted in the 6th seed heading into next week's race.
Most likely he'll be sitting right behind DeWeese, but very close to DeWeese on points. He should be very close, only within a couple of points of DeWeese after this event. And Waldrop should get a gap, and we should have a gap from 4th back to 5th after this event. And Waldrop's really hoping that maybe these two out in front of him begin to battle it out or something. That way he can maybe steal a victory here tonight.
Evan Longacre has gone to the garage area. It looked like they were trying to get that truck repaired, but they have finally pushed him behind the wall. He will finish 9th place here tonight. Again, our first caution, our only caution up to this point, coming out on lap 2. Actually, I think it was actually coming to the completion of lap 1 when race leader then Billy Fitzgerald spun out and collected up a number of drivers. Subsequently, we've only got 3 drivers on the lead lap. Matt Knight currently holds the free pass position. First truck 1 lap down in 4th. And we are less than 40 laps away from that stage caution. And we've got a battle brewing up here at the front. Both drivers have migrated up to the top of the racetrack now.
Yeah, Canova seems like he's still really struggling with handling. He almost got into the wall in 1 and 2 and lost a decent amount of time in the center of the corner. And all of a sudden we have a battle for the lead here possibly again. Canova leading. Can he hold that lane on the top side?
Both of these drivers, if I'm not mistaken, are racing for their first checkered flag in the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series. I'll double check on that. But they're out trophy hunting. You know, there's a couple of drivers we've seen last week, we saw this week, that were battling for the playoffs, but a majority of the field, they're out there just trying to win the race. So we'll see if the 47 and the 12, if it ends up coming down pretty much between those two for the remainder of this one. If we stay under green, I mean, do they decide to come down pit road together? They're not teammates. They're basically working against each other. So does somebody try and short pit the other? Does somebody try a fuel strategy against the other? We'll have to wait and see, because the mind games may already be starting.
Yeah, this is a mano-y-mano, like a Western duel here between the 47 and the 12 here today. And 47 super loose off the corner, and Santini might even be able to get to his corner panel in 1 and 2. Not quite. The 47 jumps up in front of his nose. But Canova got real loose off 3 and 4. This is a good battle right now. And the 12, he's super smooth in the corners while the 47 is really working that wheel.
You saw Canova. He was trying to catch that thing all the way through 1 and 2, fishtailing. And if you're Santini, with looking right now, the strength's on that top side. So to your point, his ideal situation is to get to that right rear quarter panel of Canova going into a corner, which he might have done right here. Is he there? Oh, I think he was. There was contact between the two.
Yeah, they definitely hit right there. Canova working that wheel, looking like Kyle Larson up there. Really working that wheel. Here comes Santini to the inside of the number 12 machine. Can he make the move in 3 and 4? He might pull a slide job here in the middle of the corner.
He was trying the top side, thinks he'll go to the bottom. Instead, looks to clear off of turn 4. Nope, Canova battles back on the top side. Great battle here for the race lead between two drivers that do not run full time. Santini gonna try it again on the bottom here through turn 1. Might have him cleared through the center. Nope, looks like Canova got back to the throttle.
That was the smoothest I've seen Canova get through a corner for the past 10 laps, and what a time to do it in that 47. He'll hold on to the race lead for now.
Great battle going on right now. Canova back out in front. Santini gonna have to rewind the rubber band and try again. He's gonna look to the top side again here. I think that's exactly where he wants to go. Might have been a little bit uncomfortable not knowing what his truck was gonna do on the inside line, but Canova's not leaving him a lane.
Racing really hard, the 47 and the 12. I think the 12 has a little bit more speed than the 47 at the moment, but can't find a way around him. Canova doing a phenomenal job of holding that high line.
And sooner or later, that right rear is going to come into play on the 47. He continues to slide through the corner. I mean, he's yanking on the wheel, trying to make sure that that thing doesn't spin at him, especially going through 1 and 2. Let's see if he's going to be smoother this time with Santini breathing down his neck. Yeah, right there, look at that. I mean, look how that back end of the truck keeps on point. That right rear points up to the outside safer barrier. I mean, that is not good handling race truck right now for Canova, but he's making it work, kind of like you said, Larson in it, dirt tracking it up there on the top side.
Yeah, he's really working that wheel. It looks like he gave space to the number 12 here. He's actually going to come down pit lane and get some fresh Goodyears and split this first stage in half.
Very interesting. We don't know what the fuel window is for these drivers, but apparently felt that he could use up those Goodyears like he was, because he's now going to come down and take on a fresh set. Is the driver of the number 47 out of Thin Line Racing. That is going to turn the race lead over to David Santini. So not the way I think Santini was expecting to take the race lead, and he's going to give it up now.
Yeah, Santini saw Canova come down pit lane, and he can't have him be on those fresher tires, so he's going to come down pit lane as well, and we're going to see where these drivers come out at, who will be the race leader after these pit stops.
Chuck Waldrop going to stay out, so he's going to get a lap led. That's going to be a valuable bonus point for the driver of the 7. Can't remember the last time that Waldrop led a lap. I think it might have been a few weeks ago when we had some green flag strategy playouts. I believe it might have been at Pocono, if I'm not mistaken. Pocono or Michigan.
Waldrop out here leading some laps, and the number 7 machine getting some points. So very, very big deal for the number 7 machine to get some points here.
We talk about the fact that we've got a stage caution coming up. So if, like I said, we don't know the fuel window, but if you can make it 60 laps on a fuel run, if you Chuck Waldrop, you running this thing to the end, get yourself a playoff point, get yourself the 10 valuable stage points?
Yes, I would definitely stay out and get those points, because he's going to fall back to only 3rd, and that's where he was running before. So if you can make it that distance, I would definitely do it. And Santini came out in front of Canova, I might add. He came out just in front of Canova. Canova a little over half a second behind Santini.
And trying to race his way up there to Waldrop to unlap himself. Both Santini and Canova losing a lap here under their green flag pit stops. They're going to look to get those laps back a hard way. And Chuck Waldrop, if he's able to maintain this current pace, he might be able to hold them off before we end up getting to that stage caution. Again, that's if he's able to make it the remainder of this 60-lap stage to the green and white checkered flag. And you talk about him only dropping back to third. I was watching Matt Knight. He's got that right side damage from when he got into the wall trying to slow up for the big wreck off of turn 4. He's running slightly similar lap times to Chuck Waldrop, but maybe about a tenth or two off. So it certainly looks like even if Matt Knight does get the lucky dog when the stage caution comes out, that Waldrop may still have enough speed to be able to hold off Matt Knight for the race lead, and Waldrop's going to come to pit road now in the 7th. So I guess that answers the question. Nobody was able to make it the 60-lap stint.
He stayed out there and led some laps, so that's good for his points situation, getting that bonus point for leading laps. That's good for him. Driver of the number 7 machine, but now our focus is back on to the race lead, and Santini is out in front by around 0.8 of a second. Canova behind him, 0.8 of a second back, and Canova hasn't really been able to cut at this lead at all yet. We'll have to see if he's able to chop it down, and these two are able to get back at it. But I would note on that last run, Canova wasn't as fast on the long run. He definitely had the short run speed and was able to pull away from Santini, but Santini came right back a few laps later.
So there, Santini ran the inside of 3 and 4, and on fresh tires immediately jumped back up to the top line through 1 and 2, again down to the white line through 3 and 4, so apparently comfortable on one lane of one area of the racetrack, and then just the complete opposite on the opposite side of the racetrack. Canova starting to close up that gap again. You talk about him going down there on the apron, how that's going to continue to wear the tires down even more, but as far as time-wise, that can gain you about a tenth or two if you're able to shortcut that apron the way he's been able to.
Yeah, it definitely helps in your time, but you do get loose a little bit down there depending on how your setup runs, and it's going to wear out your tires. So I would definitely do that at points, but me personally, I wouldn't do it every lap. But Canova's made it work so far.
I mentioned the fact that David Santini, I knew that he had made a start earlier on this season, and I said that this was the first race in the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series where he had raced on one of our broadcasts. That's incorrect, because the other start he made was the season opener at Daytona, where he brought it home in P3.
Oh man, we probably had him in the booth and everything.
I think we did.
It's embarrassing.
Here we go, battle for the lead. Canova getting alongside of David Santini. Obviously, fresher tires come into play here with Canova being able to make the pass on the bottom. Santini was trying to make the pass on the inside as he gets the wall there off of 2 when these guys were out there on about 20-25 lap old tires. So that would explain why the inside has a little bit more get up and go off of 2 and 4, as these guys are going to play a little do-si-do, crossing each other over. But it'll be interesting to see once we end up getting into a long run again here, nearing that stage caution, just how anxious these drivers will be to go down to that white line.
Yeah, Santini pit 1 lap after Canova, and I'm really curious on why he's moving to the top lane this early on. I just don't think he has the speed up there yet. He's losing time up there, and he's losing time again here in 3 and 4. It's just that high side just isn't working at the moment. Kind of need to get some more laps on those tires, and then you can move up to the high side. I just think the number 12 has moved up to that high side real early, and it's definitely cost him a lot of time plus the lead.
Matt Knight has not come to pit road yet. He is on the lead lap right now in the 3rd position, possibly hoping for a caution to come out and save him. We'll see how far he can go, because it should give us an idea of what the fuel window would be. Looks like he probably is going to try and stretch it to the max. But we mentioned last week how important it was as far as tires and having that grip, having that optimal speed. Here tonight, are we looking at drivers as far as a tire window? Are we looking at them in terms of a fuel window? Do they kind of reach the same amount of laps? I mean, especially when we consider the fact that this race may come down to money lap green flag pit stops. I mean, what are drivers more looking at in terms of what they need at the end? Are they looking at fuel, or are they looking at tires?
feel like you need to look at tires, but honestly, the strategy for tonight is kind of unpredictable because we just have two drivers out here. So once one driver does one thing, the other one's probably going to follow him right down, whether it's an early pit or staying out as late as possible. These drivers are going to try to stay on the same strategy. That way they can stay near each other.
About to have a possible important pass in the next lap and a half or so. Saw Billy Fitzgerald come down pit lane for what looked like a Wrigley scheduled stop, but the pole sitter has since then remained in his pit stall, getting damage repaired, and he is about half a lap from losing the 5th position to Robert Shin. As a matter of fact, right here down the front straightaway going to turn 1, Shin will move up into the top 5. So there's a position gain, like I mentioned, an opportunity for Robert Shin to close up that gap and maybe make a run at the Final Four once we get towards the end of this season. Still a long ways to go this year as well. I mean, we talk about next week we're at Bristol Dirt. That would have theoretically been the final race of this first round, but instead of having a round of 8, a round of 6, a round of 4, basically Darlington last week, Kansas tonight, Bristol, Texas, Homestead, Martinsville, all 6 races kind of combined into one round, and then the top 4 after those 6 races going to be battling at Nashville Superspeedway for the season finale. So there's still a lot of time for Robert Shin to be able to get himself back into the conversation for a spot in the championship 4 in the finale. And tonight, every spot he can get is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, after tonight, there's actually going to be a gap back from 4th to 5th between Waldrop and DeWeese. And if my calculations are correct, Robert Shin moving up to that 5th position should tie him with Braxton DeWeese on points at the end of this event if the race would to finish right now. So that will be good for Shin, and most likely Christopher Hill is going to be on the bubble leaving here tonight.
We talked about last week, Boyd Hogan with the runner-up finish, Andrew Navarro with the victory. I mean, what are we looking at for those two in regards to how many points they would lose here tonight? I mean, how close does it make it between them and maybe, say, Chuck Waldrop in the 7 if he's able to finish out tonight on the podium?
Actually, now that I think of it, most likely Navarro would actually be on the bubble after tonight's event. But yeah, if Waldrop continues doing what he's doing, he should be fairly close to Navarro and Christopher Hill on points. He actually should be in front of... no, he'll be behind Christopher Hill. I keep on confusing it because Christopher Hill is already out of the event. But yeah, he should be right behind them in points and be right there on the bubble.
For those that might be wondering, with Hogan finishing behind Navarro last week, wondering why wouldn't Hogan be on the bubble then? Well, we have to remember that the playoff points that were accumulated for race wins, stage wins during the course of the regular season, they carried over. And Boyd Hogan, he had a bucket load of them. So he, even with the runner-up finish last week to Navarro, is still the points leader of the playoff standings coming into tonight. Had 11 points over Navarro, 26 points over Christopher Hill. So they may say that, race wins don't count for much when you end up getting to the playoffs with everything reformatted, but boy, when you've got a lot of wins like Boyd Hogan did and all of those playoff points from stage victories, they gave him a pretty sizable gap, most importantly over that cut line, as we are going to, have half a lead change, I guess, through 1 and 2, but Canova going to battle right back on the top side.
We've hit that 20-lap mark. It seems like that's when Canova's truck really falls off, is after the first 20 laps. And Santini's right there on his inside, trying to complete this pass and maybe win stage number 1.
8 laps away from when that green and white checkered flag would be displayed. Santini again on the bottom, Canova on the top. Canova again gets a tremendous run down the straightaway, and he'll open up about a truck length and a half, 2 truck lengths over Santini. Canova's truck looks out of control for sure, but I guess he likes it that way, because I thought that maybe when they came to pit road last time, might make a little bit of an adjustment, try and tighten that truck up. Looks relatively the same as it did on the long run before we ended up having that round of pit stops. And look at that thing yaw out there off of 2. Wow, having to catch it there as it nearly went up into the bright green American Ethanol safer barrier.
Like you said, Luce is fast, and Canova definitely has a lot of speed, and he shows it in those first 20 laps, but the last 10 laps of the 30-lap run, his car just really falls off. It's not even like it falls off, it's just it's way too loose at that point. You just can hardly control it. He's going to the inside, and he's really pushing it. I think he might try a slide job here coming out of 2.
See if he can get clear off the second corner. Santini is still there, and he's going to be able to hold on to the top position. Right now, I don't think that Dylan Canova cares about those tires. He is using them up, darting low, sliding high, even having that thing yawed out on the top side. Might have to cool the tires down a little bit here, though, because Santini's opening up a bit of daylight about 6 laps away from that stage caution.
Yeah, Robert Shin was a little higher up on the racetrack than what Canova would have liked, and you had to pass him down low, and that's when you saw him almost lose it off 2, and that's how he ended up losing the race lead, because he just had no speed down the back straightaway, and now he's working this draft and working these corners, trying to get back to the back bumper of the number 12 before the end of the stage.
As things stand right now, of your playoff contenders, Chuck Waldrop would be in line for 8 stage points. Robert Shin, with that pass on Billy Fitzgerald, that moved him from getting 5 stage points up to now in line for 6. And even though he's back behind the wall, Christopher Hill technically would finish in 7th here in the first stage. So Christopher Hill's in line for 4 stage points.
Those are going to be those are going to be very important points for some of those drivers, especially Christopher Hill, because he's out of this event and he has something else happen in one of these upcoming events. He might need those 4 points to get him into the championship round.
About a truck length and a half from Santini back to Dylan Canova. Canova running about a half groove lower, kind of straddling the seam there through 1 and 2, trying to get some clean air to the nose. Trying to get a run here on David Santini. It just looks like, though, Santini's truck so much better on the long run. I don't know if it's just the way that the truck's set up, if he saves those tires a little bit better. I don't think Canova's going to be able to close that gap up. It's been kind of stationary, about 2 truck lengths here for the last few laps. There you see him use that apron to close the gap up, but he definitely loses his speed by the time they get through the center of the corner off.
And that's just where Canova seems to really struggle. I think Canova might have the faster truck, maybe even on the long runs as well, but it's just, he just loses it. The car just gets so loose at the end of these runs, but you see it right here when he has that smooth line. He's really catching up to the number 12 machine when he has that smooth line through the corner.
Gonna be 2 to go here, we believe, for the stage caution. We've seen the stage caution come out a little bit earlier, a little bit later than the projected laps, so it's not directly going to come out on lap 60. My gosh, I don't know how that 47 hasn't wrecked yet. Another big slide, another big save by Canova through 1 and 2.
You see how close he's getting to Santini there. Once he has that smooth line, he's really able to get moving, but once he gets a little loose, it just kills his speed, and he's falling back now because he's just sliding all over this racetrack here.
Lap 60 going to go on the board for David Santini. We should see the stage yellow momentarily. Right now, David Santini is the only OSN Racing representative out there on the racetrack. You've got Billy Fitzgerald still on pit road, Evan Longacre out of this race, and he's spoiling the Thin Line Racing party. Canova, Waldrop, Matt Knight, right now, all 2nd, 3rd, 4th positions.
Coming across the line here. Santini and Canova.
Yeah, there you go. There's that stage caution. I was going to mention, when this yellow comes out, Matt Knight is the only driver basically in line for a free pass. But when we saw him make his green flag pit stop, he lost 2 laps. So he's only going to get 1 of those laps back, which means that when we go back for the restart, we're still only going to have 3 trucks on the lead lap: Santini, Canova, and Waldrop.
Crazy, crazy, crazy. It's a 3-man race, and the 12 and the 47 are racing hard. Honestly, I would not be surprised at all if this race just falls into the hands of Waldrop.
Coming around to pick up the pace car momentarily will be David Santini. I believe this is going to be Santini's first stage victory of the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series. Not certain who's led the most laps so far between the 12 and the 47. I'm pretty sure it'd probably be the 47. I think he's led more laps in the first half of the run on both the stints we've had, more so than the 12's laps led near the end of those stints.
It's probably really close on lead laps between these two drivers. I'm expecting them all to come in and get 4 fresh Goodyears and fill up those tanks full of fuel, and probably expect these guys to come down pit road 2 more times before the end of this race.
So pit road open. Here come the race leaders. Lap down trucks of Robert Shin and Matt Knight. They'll have to come down the following lap. Undoubtedly going to be packing that thing full of fuel, going to be changing all 4 Goodyears. Interesting, we're not going to be able to visibly see it, but interesting to know if any adjustments going to be made on these trucks. Like I said, Canova looked even more loose on this run than he was on the first run. Maybe he was pushing it a little bit harder in that great battle with David Santini, but that one point, there was one point that I thought for certain that 47 was going to snap around and was going to be junk. I wonder if maybe that scared him enough that he's going to tighten that thing up just the least little bit.
1 point? I saw about 40 points. I'm very impressed with the abilities of the driver, the number 47, Dylan Canova. He seems to be a really talented race car driver, just to be able to hang on and to that race car like he did, and not even just that, able to keep up his speed at times, hang on to the race lead. So I think you're right. If he's able to make just a slight change to that machine and make it a little bit tighter on the long runs, I don't think he can lose this. I think he might be the fastest truck. He just cannot hang on to that truck at the end of these runs.
You gotta remember too that Dylan Canova did not start out the season in that 47 truck. Matter of fact, that was Robert Anderson. So Canova, a fill-in driver, a driver swap, if you will, here during the playoffs for Thin Line Racing, and doing a heck of a job, to your point, bringing it to David Santini. I mentioned the fact that we've seen Santini in the past here on FRN, back when he was driving an Xfinity car, and went to victory lane multiple times, and saw him earlier on this season at Daytona, now showing what he's able to do in a truck on the speedways. And right now, you talk about the 47 being the fastest truck, the 12 seems to be the best at preserving the tires. So with us pretty much looking at potentially a green flag run from now to the finish, is it advantage the 12, or can the 47, not only with the raw speed he's shown, can he maybe play some pit road games to be able to leapfrog David Santini? Because it didn't look like there when they made the green flag pit stops in the first stage, like the 47 was able to gain the advantage.
Well, I would like to note that Canova and Santini both just came down pit road, and Canova hasn't left. Canova is still on pit road in the 47, and the 12 looked like he came down to top off on fuel, but he forgot to uncheck his tires, so he used up another set of tires.
Canova's rolling now. Looks like he's going to get out before the race leader comes around to lap him, so not certain what that extended stay on pit road was for Dylan Canova. And Chuck Waldrop's coming down pit road again in the 7 truck. He had already been down pit lane. I don't know if this is to maybe top off the fuel tanks. So, yeah, I mean, if it's just you and 2 other trucks, why not try some unorthodox strategy?
Because we saw Matt Knight earlier. Matt Knight, how many laps did Matt Knight go? He went maybe a little over 40 laps, something
around that. Yeah.
So if they really push it, they might be able to make it on fuel from here. They might be able to, and I think that's the idea here. They want to just do one more stop, one green flag stop in the middle of this run and make it the rest of the way. I think that is the strategy, and Santini's going to really hope that strategy works, because he only has one more set of tires now, because he just used 2 sets of tires when he came in and refueled.
That's a good point, too. Yeah, these drivers were only given 3 additional sets of tires apart from the set of Goodyears they started this race on. So, going to be very important here as far as if you've only got 1 set waiting for you to make this run count. heading towards that final stint to the finish, as Canova is going to get up here alongside of David Santini. Waldrip, I don't know if he's going to catch or not. Green flag back in the air here. Santini gets us underway for our final stage of the evening. Going to be 85 laps to go.
Waldrip was right behind Matt Knight and Robert Shin in that fifth in line, third spot on the racetrack. Canova barely able to get there in time to jump on the high side of the number 12 machine, and these two are to continue to battle it out. But Santini, a decent lead here at the beginning of the run.
We saw earlier on when Dylan Canova got passed by David Santini after the first cycle green flag pit stops, he was able to reel Santini back in, and he was able to make the pass for the race lead. We'll see if he's able to do the same here. He really gains a huge advantage there, running the apron on the front straightaway. Santini's got to be seeing that, but he, I guess, doesn't feel comfortable running down there. Like we said, it seems to be preserving his tires a little bit better than the 47 on the long run.
Yeah, we saw it on the last run after pit stops, right when they came out. Santini pit one lap after Canova, and he came out just in front of Canova, a little over half second. Canova was able to drive him down, pass him, drive away a little bit, but Santini was able to get right back to his bumper in a couple of laps and get right back past him. So we're going to see these drivers battle it out again as the number 47 of Canova gets to the inside. Going to jump back to the high side. Does he maybe try a slide job here in 3 and 4?
Drives it right down there, left front, almost to the white line. Lets it drift up off the corner. Can't let it go as wide as he would like to with Santini to driver's right, but utilizes that apron down the front straightaway again. Gains about a truck length. He might have him cleared here through the center of 1 and 2. Will he drift up in front of the 12? He will. He'll complete the pass, but man, that thing was all sorts of sideways once again.
Santini going to try to the crossover to the inside. He's going to be able to slide job him right back in 3 and 4. Does he move that truck to the high side? He's clear of the 47. There he goes to the high side.
Great battling between these two. I mean, I think right now, you know, the hardship of drivers out of the race early in this one, leaving it down between the two of them, I think they're out here just having fun. I think this is some good banter going on between these two drivers. A little, anything you can do, I can do better going on here at Kansas.
This is a good battle we got here. The 12 and the 47 been going on all race long, almost halfway here. It's been the 12 and the 47 this whole 70-lap race so far. Can Santini hold on here? Canova, can he make the pass? He's going to try to get to the inside. He is really loose getting onto that apron right there.
Tried to see if he could get to the left rear quarter panel of Santini going into turn 1. Not able to. Look at this. High, wide, and handsome. Shaking hands with that outside safer barrier. Dylan Canova trying to generate back straightaway speed. Santini, though, on the bottom had a really nice 1 and 2. Keeps the 47 at bay for the moment.
Yeah, it's the same thing I was saying on the last run, but this time instead of Santini, it's Canova. That high side just is not going to work at the beginning portion of this run. You got to use the inside the first 10 laps until the tires wear out a little bit, and you can move up to the high side. And Canova's realized that, and he's jumping to the inside, and I think he's going to clear Santini here in 1 and 2. He's going to move up to the high side off the corner. Does Santini maybe try a crossover?
The run down the back straightaway is Santini. Where does he go? Where does Canova decide to go? Canova's going to go to the bottom. Santini will go to the top side. Doesn't look like you said that grip is there right now for the 12. 47 going to open up a nice sizable gap, almost 4 truck lengths back to David Santini as Canova goes back to the point.
I just don't know why they keep on trying it. And there he goes. He's going to go do it. He's going to lose time. They're just losing time on the high side at the beginning portion of this run.
Canova right now has got maybe the biggest lead that either one of these two drivers has had over the other here since we went back green. If you're Canova, do you back it down just a little bit, rein it in, try and save those tires, try not to push it and overcook that right rear? Because that's been his Achilles heel on the long run.
Me personally, I back it down a little bit, but I don't expect Canova to back it down one bit. We saw him especially on that first run. He was around almost a second in front of Santini, but he was almost losing at every corner, just super sideways, really working the wheel, and he appears to be doing that once again up here in the lead. How much longer does he have on those tires before they start to hurt him?
Again, both of these drivers looking for their first checkered flag of the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series career here tonight at Kansas. And then these drivers pack it up and head next week to the world's fastest half mile. Well, actually, we should probably call it the world's dirtiest half mile next week, the dirt-covered Bristol Motor Speedway. I mean, that's going to be an interesting one when these drivers will head onto the racetrack there, and we're already generating some really big storylines as far as the playoffs are concerned, with drivers that aren't making starts, drivers that are struggling down around that cut line, and I'm wondering just what the outlook's going to be, not only going into Bristol Dirt next week, but what's the outlook going to look like leaving, because Bristol in and of itself, when it's the asphalt paved racetrack, we know that it's a wild card track and always seems to play its part into the postseason, but now you add in the dimension of dirt, and these drivers have only been on dirt one other time this season. That was back at Knoxville.
They call it the last great Coliseum for a reason, Seth. Bristol's going to be insane next week with all the dirt on it. It's going to be crazy, to say the least. Question is, which drivers are able to get the most out of it? I'm expecting to see maybe a little more heads out there, because the dirt racing is quite interesting, especially in these trucks. It could be a lot of fun.
I want to go back to the strategy of Chuck Waldrop. You can see right there is on the same straightaway as the leaders. He's running about roughly 3.5 seconds behind the top two. But he decided to come down pit road, topped off the fuel tank, so he's a little bit better on fuel than the two ahead of him. We know that just based off of raw speed, it appears that Canova, David Santini have the advantage on the 7. Does that one extra lap of fuel, does that in any way give Waldrop an advantage, or just based on the fact that he's going to probably have to come to pit road around the same time as these guys, granted maybe a lap later, they're still going to have to change 4 tires. It's going to take the same amount of time to change those tires as to fill up the tank. You wouldn't have to put as much fuel in as these other guys are, but just as far as the tire aspect, I don't know if that gained him a whole lot.
Yeah, on the tire aspect, I think it'll gain him a little bit, but he's just so far back where it's not necessarily going to make a big impact on that gap necessarily. I think the bigger impact is the fuel itself. If these drivers, Canova and Santini, are a little bit short on fuel, maybe a half mile or a mile or however short they are on fuel, if they're a little bit short, Waldrop might be able to make it. And like I said earlier, it would be crazy if he can come in here and steal a win, because coming into the playoffs, I kind of consider the final 4, not to necessarily be a lock, but it'd be really difficult to knock any of those 4 drivers out. But Waldrop possibly prove us wrong, Seth.
Robert Shin going to go another lap down here. Race leader Dylan Canova going to bypass him out of turn 4, so Shin will fall to 13 laps down, albeit still running inside the top 5 in the 5th position. Let's talk about pit road, because we know that these drivers are going to have to visit at least one more time before the conclusion of this race. They've already been on pit road under green flag conditions once tonight, and the speeding police didn't have to hand out any tickets. This next pit stop they'll make will be the money stop, and I was watching these guys, particularly Matt Knight, in practice, and he came flying to the pit road commitment line, but was able to back that thing down pretty well to pit road speed. So it looks like this racetrack in particular, it's not that difficult to get onto pit lane, and I wonder if with the nighttime conditions, that little bit of added grip, that plays into it as well.
I would say Kansas is probably one of the more easy tracks to get down to pit lane, and luckily we don't have a big field for those instances, because when it comes to Kansas, it's definitely one of the tracks that you can see the most accidents coming onto pit road. Not because the pit road is difficult, but when a driver gets slowed down on the bottom, the pit road just comes up so fast, and it's a multi-groove racetrack, so there could possibly be 2 or 3 wide behind you, and so it could really stack up. But we have a small field, so we won't be facing those issues here tonight.
It was interesting. October 19th is when we'll be heading to the Homestead Miami Speedway, and it's basically going to be the closest 1.5 miles left on the schedule to Kansas. We've also got the 1.5 miles of Texas, but that's its own monster. We ended up tonight not having Boyd Hogan in the field, no appearance by Andrew Navarro, Christopher Hill taken out in the early going, no Braxton DeWeese. We know that all of these guys are always in the conversation at the 1.5 miles for being inside of the top 5, out in front, to take a checkered flag, at least here tonight, we're going to have no notes to be able to go off of when we eventually get to Homestead, Miami, with the early departure by Hill. So it'll be interesting to see between those 4 drivers and a few others who the favorite might end up being going into what would end up being our final mile-and-a-half racetrack of the season.
At this point, I wouldn't say there is any favorites because I'm unsure which drivers are actually necessarily competing for the championship. It could possibly be Waldrop's championship, Seth. It's very possible.
And don't forget, Chuck Waldrop, what was it, 4 or 5 weeks removed from the regular season finale? He was I think he was triple-digit points outside of the cut line, but had a number of drivers from around 11th through 15th that weren't showing up near the end of the season. Waldrop made the starts, gained the points, and eventually found himself up with a sizable gap above that cut line heading into the regular season finale. So yeah, to your point, keep showing up week after week, accumulate those points. Again, it's not a winning you're in system, so continue to build the points up, and Chuck Waldrop could be sitting pretty by the time we get to that season finale. Speaking of sitting pretty, David Santini, sitting pretty again, continues to be the king of the long run, preserving those good years, and he's knocking on the door of Canova for the race lead once again, about 20-25 laps into the run.
Yeah, once Canova hits 20 laps on tires, those tires just kind of fall off. He just loses a lot of control. That right rear really falls apart. He gets super loose. But he's holding that high side well, which makes it really difficult for Santini to get past. The only way Santini ends up usually getting past on that inside is Canova gets a little too loose or something, and Santini's able to make that move to the inside. So if Canova's able to at least hold a somewhat decent line on that top side, it's going to be really difficult for Santini to get past.
We went back green with 85 laps to go. So let's round it up to 90 laps, and we saw these drivers come to pit road during the first stage at around the completion of lap 30, splitting that 60-lap stint in half. Is there any advantage here tonight, kind of like what we saw last week at Darlington, if somebody decided to two-stop this, maybe come to pit road 30 laps into this stint, run another 30 laps with 20 to go, make another pit stop, and try and see if they could gain speed, gain time on somebody that might stretch it 40 laps and do it on one pit stop from now to the checkered flag?
I don't think the two-stop strategy is really a good strategy at this racetrack because they're having tire fall off and they're falling off on times. But last week at Darlington, they were falling off 2, maybe even 3 seconds at times off their fastest lap time. Right now, these drivers aren't even a second and a half off their fastest lap time. So the fall off isn't as hard, and they're usually already falling almost a second off their quickest lap time pace 10 or 15 laps in. So I don't think a two-stop strategy is worth it here tonight. I think the one-stop strategy, if it's possible, is the way to go.
I don't see any visible damage on the 47 truck. We saw he had that very lengthy stay on pit road under the stage caution. He did get back out off of pit road before the pace car came around to be able to remain on the lead lap for the upcoming restart. I don't know if he had to step away real quickly while he was on pit road or anything like that, but we'll have to see here once we end up having this upcoming green flag pit stop if it's just going to be a quick 14-second his pit stall for Dylan Canova, or does he maybe have a little bit of damage that we just visibly can't see, but it's actually there, and that's why he spent a little bit extra time on pit road.
I think he took full advantage of the small field and there only being 3 drivers on the lead lap, and probably, like you said, probably stepped away to either grab something to drink or went to the bathroom real quick would be my guess on why he sat on pit road for that lengthy amount of time. Yeah, because there's no damage on that 47 and he's not falling off at all really that hard. I think this run might even be his best run. I think this is the smoothest I've seen him on the long run so far. Maybe he had made a little bit of a change while he was on pit road to tighten up that car on the long run like we were talking about, Seth.
Boy, you saw right there, David Santini. I think that might be the first time he tried the apron on the front straightaway, and some dust was kicked up there as his left rear went off the racing surface, clipping that grass. So, don't know how anxious Santini will be to go back down there again. We'll see this time out of turn 4.
We're 30 laps into this run, so this will end up being the longest these drivers have ran on tires, and I'm thinking they're probably going to want to make it around 42, 43 laps at least on this tank of fuel to have a shot of making it to the end.
Starting to see the 47 yawing out just a little bit there, not nearly as bad as it was before. And I think you're exactly right. I think this is the best we've seen the 47 truck look on the long run. Santini put the pressure on him about 5-6 laps ago, but Canova's been able to drive back a ways. So doing a good job at this point in time of continuing to maintain the pace, and looks a little bit steadier in the corners. So he may have hit right on the perfect combination of having that loose sensation, but not enough where it's wrecking loose.
Yeah, just a very slight change at the setup is very possible in the 47 because, like I said, he seems a lot smoother on this run because he seems like he has around the same amount of speed. Because I didn't at first I thought he was falling off in speed on that first round, but I quickly realized he wasn't necessarily falling off on speed. He just got so loose in the corners that he's automatically going to lose some speed just from moving the wheels so much in that 47 machine. It moves it around a little bit there in 1 and 2, but he's overall holding a fairly smooth line, and you're seeing him pull away from the number 12.
Let's go on board here with the race leader. Watch the wheel motion as he puts it right up there above the second set of white hash marks. Nice and smooth there off of turn 4. I mean, that's where I think that having that loose truck gains him so much, is the ability to be able to turn off the corner. Normally at your 1.5 mile racetracks, as the truck, or in this case, tightens up, the inability to turn, especially off of turn 4, that outside wall starts to creep up to the right side of your truck. A lot of drivers deal with that. If you're able to have the truck remain looser on the long run, it gives you the ability for that turn off of the corner, and you're able to kind of straighten the truck for the straightaway, and it gives you that optimal speed. But you can definitely see the struggles from the entry to the corner to the center of the corner. Watch again here, turns left, turns it back right. You can see him working the wheel, never keeps it in a straight motion as he continues to kind of yank it back there, counter steering that loose sensation. But I mean, what looks like right now uncomfortable to us, it's completely driver's preference. It's an open setup league. You set up the truck you want to set it up, and this may be right in his wheelhouse on how he wants that truck to feel, where his comfort level is.
Yeah, that must be his comfort level because right now he's putting the fastest laps down on the racetrack, even with all that movement on the wheel. I don't know how many times in the center of 1 and 2 that right rear just came so close to smacking the wall in the center of the corner. I just don't know how he quite hasn't hit it with that right rear yet. He's came so close to getting that wall.
I don't know, with what we're seeing here under the lights at 1.5 miles, if Dylan Canova decides to run the 47 next week at Bristol Dirt, I think we got to have him up in the conversation of people to watch, right? I mean, he's dirt tracking it at 1.5 miles. He certainly must know how to make it around the dirt-covered half mile.
You know, with that 47 on the car and him going as sideways as he is, he looks like Ricky Stenhouse out there on the dirt. He's definitely someone to watch out for if he ends up competing next week on Bristol Dirt, because he definitely knows how to handle a loose race car.
They're going to come around. This is going to be the 36th and 37th lap where Canova and Santini completed. So we're looking roughly about anywhere from 5 to maybe 7, 8, 9, depending on just exactly how far the fuel window is for these drivers to stretch it before they come to pit road. And remember, Canova came to pit lane from the lead before Santini did during the first stage. Does he do that again, or does he wait for the 12 to make the first move?
I feel like you have to wait because the tires are going to be a little stronger at the end of the run, and you want to make sure you can get to the finish on fuel. So I feel like the longer you can stay out, the better. And a little under 50 laps remaining. We're getting close to splitting this final stage here in half, so they can make that final pit stop. Who will have enough fuel to make it to that midway point and then make it to the end of the race on just one more stop?
Chuck Waldrop continuing to just ride there in that third position. Honestly, I think Chuck will be very happy with a third place performance here tonight. He's certainly going to, as we know, move up inside of the top 4 of the playoff standings after the conclusion of this race, after a bit of struggles last week where I think he brought it home in 7th place, if I recall correctly, 7th or 8th. Here tonight in line for a podium finish, which I'll have to look back, but I'm fairly certain it would be his first podium finish of the year. I mean, what a time to do it right here at the start of the playoffs.
And coming off a 9th place finish last week at Darlington, Chuck Waldrop. And yeah, I don't think he's had a podium yet this season. And like I said earlier, this could be huge for Waldrop. You have a lot of drivers that are in the playoffs that are not here today. And then you have Christopher Hill, who was here. He wrecked out. And someone like, for example, Braxton DeWeese, he's been really hot at the end of the regular season, but this 2-race run has really put off that hot streak. Wrecked out last week early, and this week is a no-show. So Braxton DeWeese all of a sudden has lost that hot streak that he was on as well.
As of right now, with no Navarro, no Hogan, back-to-back DNFs for Christopher Hill, I don't think at this point anybody's safe. If we started out the season and we were guaranteed to have everybody, if we started out the playoffs, I should say, and we were guaranteed to have all 7 of our player contenders showing up each week, I would have said just based off of stage points and playoff points accumulated alone, Boyd Hogan was going to probably be a shoo-in to make it into the finale. Christopher Hill, Andrew Navarro, multi-time winners. You know, you're probably looking at them at least to fill in 75% of the Final Four, but now, at least at this point in time, I think it's even possible that if we continue to trend in this direction, you could see a favorite like Boyd Hogan, a 7-time winner, maybe miss out on the Final Four, depending on what happens in these upcoming few weeks. I mean, nothing's guaranteed. We don't know who's going to show up for what race, but at least just based off of the 2 starts here since the playoffs began, things are looking very interesting as to maybe a Final Four we weren't expecting before the eve of the playoffs.
And we're around halfway through this run. I would expect these drivers to come in within the next few laps. If they pit right now, I'm not sure if they would make it on fuel. It'd be super close. I want them to maybe go out, stay out another lap or 2 to make sure they can make it to the finish on fuel. But I would expect these leaders to be coming down pit road any moment now.
Well, Matt Knight, who stayed out the longest on the last green flag run, almost 40 laps, he was the first one to pit road here on this round of green flag pit stops. He loses another lap as a result, currently -3, actually lost 2 laps. He was -1 after getting the lucky dog when the stage caution came out, and I think Canova might be coming this time. He's a very low entry into turn 3.
Let's see if anybody's going to come down, and looks like they're going to... Nope, Canova's going to change his mind last second, come down pit road.
Oh, no!
He spins it! Canova spins it on the entry to pit road! Oh, no!
Gonna lose him a lot of time. He didn't slide past the commitment line. He did make the commitment line, and he was below pit road speed, so he will not get hit with an illegal entry or with speeding, but that's a lot of time that's going to cost the 47. And now if you're David Santini, do you maybe tiptoe onto pit road to make sure that you don't spin out?
Yes, you have to tiptoe, and here he comes. He's coming onto pit road. There's no need to get in there quick, risk a speeding penalty, and great entry. Perfect entry from the number 12. Just took it nice and calm into pit lane, and all he needs to do at this point is ride around. If he just rides around, he's going to make it on fuel at this point. He stayed out long enough. All he needs to hope is that there's no cautions. If there's no cautions, Santini is going to win this race.
Dylan Canova just now leaving pit road. He had about 4.5 truck lengths back to Santini when he made the indication he was coming to pit lane. We'll see how much he loses in terms of track position with that spin once everything cycles around. Santini down and away with his final pit stop of the evening. It will not be coming out as the race leader, though. Chuck Waldrop stays out an extra lap. Now he's going to come to pit lane, so it'll take a lap or 2 before Santini eventually cycles back to the top position. And as he's coming off pit road, Santini's got about 9, now 8.5 seconds over Dylan Canova. I'd say we're looking maybe about 5-6 seconds going to separate these two.
Waldrop was around 8 or 9 seconds behind the race leaders right before these pit stops. So he's a driver to watch out for to maybe battle it out for second with Canova, depending on what happens.
So talked about the fact that that last run was the best run we saw Dylan Canova put together. Oh, I think, oh, no, correction. Nope. I was looking at Waldrop's telemetry, so never mind about what I was just going to say. I thought that Canova might be coming back to pit road, but, we saw Canova not once, but twice be able to get up to Santini. Granted, he didn't have to overcome 7.5 seconds like he did now, but he was able to reel Santini in, especially in the early going of a run. Is it outside the realm of possibility that Canova, who has appeared to have a faster truck than Santini, could, with a little less than 40 laps to go, close up a 7.5 second gap between himself and David for this win?
On pure speed, no. I don't think he can make that up on pure speed. But since he's at the hope that Santini puts a wheel wrong, but if this is the other way around, Santini sitting in second and Canova sitting in first, I would see that as a more likely possibility. Even though Canova has more speed, he's gotten loose a lot, he's made some mistakes. Santini's kept a smooth wheel and has run almost a perfect race to that number 12 machine. So he's going to be hoping on not just a mistake from the number 12, but a huge mistake, like hitting the wall or almost spinning it out or actually spinning it out or something along those lines.
David Santini right now appears to be out there trying to put down Q laps. Last time by, he was about 8/100ths faster than Dylan Canova. Let's see about this time. 30.907 for Santini at the line. Canova going to cross with a 9.48, so another 400ths gained by David Santini. Not much, but he doesn't really have to gain on the 47. He just has to maintain that gap.
Yeah, if I was Santini, I would just take it easy. Just drive out there maybe 80 or 90%. Just don't really drive the car that hard. And just in case, if for some odd reason Canova's able to make that gap, you'll have plenty of tires for the end of the run.
David Santini, go back to first couple laps of this race, one of the few drivers that was able to get through that big wreck off of turn 4. He was right in the middle of it as well. Was able to snake his way on by to be able to remain in this race. It's been a great battle between himself and Dylan Canova since then. Santini was able to pick up the stage victory. He's looking now to sweep the weekend with the stage and the race checkered flags waving over his hood. And it just came down to pit road there for Dylan Canova. Had he not had that mistake, we would probably still be seeing Santini and Canova battling it out here for this victory. Only thing that Canova can hope for now would be a caution to bunch everybody back up, but it's just so spread out. It's basically at the point that if you're going to have a caution come out, it's a driver beating themselves up rather than making contact with somebody else.
Yeah, it's the most likely reason of a caution. And with some of these trucks being as damaged as they are out there, I just don't see them even creating enough speed to make some sort of self-spin or something along those lines. I think he's just really going to be hoping that Santini makes some sort of mistake or error, or maybe times it wrong, passing a lap car, some miscommunication, something. He needs something bad to happen to Santini to win this race.
Dylan Canova was on the outside of the pole sitter Billy Fitzgerald when he went around. That's how he was able to avoid the incident. It's interesting when you look at our top three here, Santini, Canova, Waldrop. Canova was the only driver that started this race up inside of the top 5 from the outside of the front row. Santini started 7th, Waldrop started in 8th. That's how they were able to avoid the wreck. You had 80% of our top 5 all involved in that wreck, and 3 of them in the garage area, 1 still sitting on pit road having damage repair done. He's been sitting there for the last 85 laps or so, that being our pole sitter Billy Fitzgerald. So this race, the landscape of it, what was looking like was going to be a really good battle amongst 8-9 drivers, all of a sudden it turned into a 3-horse race, eventually to a 2-horse race, and now for David Santini, it's just go out there and set the best laps you possibly can here, closing in on 30 laps to go.
At this point, you're not running qualifying laps anymore. You're running practice laps. You're just running around, feeling out the car. That's all you're doing at this point if you're the number 12 machine. You're hardly driving that car. You're just trying to make it to the finish in one piece. That's the goal for the number 12 machine. And if he can do that, he'll end up in victory lane, and he is approaching a lap car of Matt Knight, so they'll have to communicate on how he's going to get around this 33 machine.
And how important is this as far as information for David Santini to maybe pass it on to his teammates, Billy Fitzgerald and Evan Longacre? I mean, neither one of those drivers, we know they had good speed. Longacre qualified in 5th. Fitzgerald started on the pole, but neither one really were able to get out of the blocks, getting involved in that early wreck. So, I mean, as far as information on how the track changes, how the truck adapts to those changes, be able to feed that information to his teammates for Santini, do you maybe test a couple of things here? Not necessarily to put yourself in trouble, but to kind of see how the truck feels at a certain point of the run that you haven't tested out here so far, because you've been mixing it up with Canova on these runs.
Yeah, I guess you can test some stuff out, but I wouldn't go too hard on the testing, because then at that point you're kind of putting yourself at a risk, and you're kind of risking your car and risking a race at that point. So I think the main concern is just to get to the finish, maybe test out some lines a little bit. But if you begin to feel uncomfortable, I recommend just calming down the tires and just chilling out for the remainder of the race, because we have a little over 25 laps remaining in the event.
With Matt Knight going a lap down, that pretty much takes him out of the realm of possibility of having a chance of getting back on the lead lap should we have gotten a caution in these final 30 laps. He was 1 lap down during that cycle of pit stops. That would have put him in the free pass, but it's unlikely enough that we're going to have a caution from now to the checkers. It's very unlikely, actually, I would say it's impossible, that we're going to have 2 cautions between now and the end of the race. If just joining us, we ended up having a big wreck near the early stages of this race before we even completed the 3rd lap. It took about half of our field out, and it's the only caution for cause that we've had here tonight. We've had 2 cautions officially, that second one, of course, being the stage caution at the completion of lap 60. You see the 13 lead changes that we've had here tonight. That's basically been Santini and Canova back and forth. You've had Chuck Waldrop out in front a couple of times during green flag pit stops, but really here this evening, it doesn't look like it now with the pit road spin by Canova. It's been the Santini-Canova show all evening long.
They've been going back and forth throughout this event, but because of Canova spinning out while coming on to pit road for the last set of pit stops, it's really put him at a big deficit. He's cut it down a little bit. He's cut it down from, I think it started as around 7.8 seconds, and he's cut it down to a little under 7 seconds. So he's making up some time, but he doesn't have nearly enough laps to make up this gap.
Go on board here with Canova, who continues to try and take the shorter way around the racetrack. Lets it ride up a little bit there before he exits out of turn 2, right up against that bright green back straightaway safer barrier. Again, tries to hook it down to that inside line through 3 and 4. Looks like he comes up off the corner a little bit earlier now than he was back when he was battling with Santini. He was kind of keeping it pinned down there to that white line just about to the time that he got off of turn 4, trying to clear Santini then when battling for the race lead. Now with the room available, woo, wiggle right there off of turn 2, but with the room available, the space available, just kind of letting that truck slide up a little bit, kind of take its head there off the corner to try and get that optimal straightaway speed.
That's the big key, is to get off the corner. I feel like that's where you're going to find the most speed, is it's most important to have that exit speed, because these are some pretty long straightaways here. You want to have that speed coming down the back straightaway and coming through the front stretch.
We talked about here tonight how this was the first race of the playoffs. My gracious.
First?
Canova again.
Never heard first said like that, Seth.
Woo, yeah, that's that had a couple more syllables in it than I think was originally put in Webster's dictionary. I saw some sparks coming off that right rear quarter panel of Canova there. Has made a little contact with the safer barrier, but this is the first racetrack of the playoffs that we kind of looked at and said, this is where drivers are going to be able to control their own destiny. This is where they're going to be able to find a comfort level on the long run. They're not going to have to necessarily fight the out-of-the-box elements of the racetrack. I mean, Darlington's got all those monikers, the track too tough to tame, the Lady in Black. We've got Bristol next week, the last great Coliseum, the world's fastest half mile. We got it dirt covered. We've got Texas coming up the following week, the reconfigured Texas, so that's going to be something drivers will have to struggle with as far as saving tires. Are we looking at maybe Homestead as the next track where these drivers will be able to enter into a kind of a comfort zone like they've been able to tonight, in terms of where they're mostly going to just be battling their race trucks and their race setups rather than the elements of the track itself?
Yeah, Homestead is going to be probably the, I guess you could say, most simplest track remaining. That way these drivers understand that track a little more. It's not as, you're not as likely to get damaged. It's a lot wider of a racetrack, a lot safer of a racetrack, but there's definitely a big difference in speed at Homestead compared to a lot of these other speedways. You have your drivers that really get Homestead and have incredible speed, and then you have some drivers that just don't know quite what's the right line to run there. So there's definitely going to be a split field, I feel like, when we get there.
Riding on board here with David Santini. He's catching up to a slower truck. I believe that might be the 73 of Robert Shin. Shin's currently several laps down, just out there logging laps. He's going to be in line to finish inside the top 5 here tonight. I talked about the fact, the stage points are going to be important here this evening. Waldrop got stage points. Shin's getting stage points. Christopher Hill, I believe he got stage points last week at Darlington. He got stage points here tonight despite not making it to the completion of the stage. I don't necessarily know, but because I can't really do the calculations in my head, but would the stage points that Hill was able to get here tonight, he came into this race 26 points behind Boyd Hogan, and he was 24 points, I believe, ahead of Chuck Waldrop. Is there a possibility Christopher Hill could jump to the top of the playoff point standings here tonight based on the fact that Hogan and Navarro didn't start this race? And even with the DNF, Hill is still able to get points through the stage finishing, and he's going to finish, about only 4 positions behind Chuck Waldrop? Less than 20 laps to go here at Kansas. Santini continuing to show the way. He's now migrated up there to that top line. We saw for the most part he was running down on the inside line, maybe migrated about a half groove up off of the inside, but now he's moved up there to the top line again. Thing I'm noticing though, he's got about, truck length between himself and that safer barrier. When he was battling with Canova near the end of that run before they made the green flag pit stops, he almost a couple of times was brushing that safer barrier. So he's tentatively up there, I guess you could say.
Yeah, both of these drivers have really ran that high lane well and have kept it close to the wall, but haven't really gotten up into the wall. But I know for me personally, I like running that high lane, but I can't run it for that long a period of time without at least touching it or getting somewhat closer than they are.
Canova now battling with Matt Knight. If he just passed the 33. About 3 lap fresher tires for the 47. I just actually noticed there, Canova's been up in the wall. There was some right side damage on his Chevrolet Silverado. We'll see if we can get another angle here off of 4. Yeah, he's gotten the safer barrier at some point here on this run, and it's only happened in the last 5 laps or so.
Yeah, he's been getting after it back there, just trying to make up this time. He's definitely too far back to really make it all up, but he's working hard. He's trying his best to try to get up there. He knows he has a car capable of winning this race, and he's just pushing it so hard and finally got up into the wall. He's been getting so close to getting up into the wall this whole event, and looks like he finally got up into it.
And you talked about, here tonight how fall off, it's there, but it's not nearly as prevalent as it was as at Darlington. Case in point would be Canova in his attempt to try and reel in David Santini. Lap times have been very similar, sometimes advantage to the 12, sometimes advantage to the 47. It was 7.5 seconds between David Santini and Dylan Canova when everything cycled around. It has taken 30 laps for Dylan Canova to just close up half a second between himself and the race leader.
Yeah, hasn't really caught up too much. Plus, he did hit the wall, so he might have caught up a little more than a half second. But still, it's just not enough time and not enough laps to make up that huge gap. But definitely, his tires are a little bit fast. He's a little bit faster, and those tires are working for him a little bit better at the moment. But he's not able to put down the consistent lap times that Santini is able to put down.
Oh, it's interesting. We were talking about how these guys, they seem to be on level playing ground several times in this race, crossing each other over for the race lead. They're even similar in some respects to the best lap time they laid down here tonight. Same numbers, not necessarily in the same order. Canova has the fastest lap of the night, a 30.769. David Santini not too far behind with a 30.796. So they had the same numbers in their lap time, just slightly different order, but they're the only two drivers here tonight that were able to hit the sub 30.8 second bracket. Now, not saying that other drivers might not have done that as well, but a lot of drivers never even got the chance to find out.
A lot of drivers didn't even figure out what their trucks were capable of doing because they wrecked out coming out of 3 and 4 on lap numero uno and weren't able to get back on track. So it's really unfortunate for a lot of those guys. Like Fitzgerald, he was able to get back on track for a little bit, but then went to the garage. Christopher Hill, who's always fast. Jeanette had some good drivers exit this race early. Robert Shin with all his damage.
Evan Longacre was, I believe, making his first start of the season, and he never even got a chance to complete a lap here tonight. Saw Robert Shin there in the 73 hitting pit road. I don't know if this is a regularly scheduled stop for him or not. He is multiple laps down, so he may be off pit sequence from everybody else. He certainly won't drop any further than 5th place. We'll see if he returns back to the racetrack or not, but it'll be 7 laps to go this time for David Santini, who, again, as we documented, this is only the second start he's made this year in the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series. 3rd place at Daytona. Very much in the battle conversation here tonight for the race victory. Executed that final pit stop to perfection to hold now an over 7.5 second lead back to Dylan Canova, and just a few laps away from picking up that first checkered flag of his career.
Only a few laps remaining at this point. He just hopes that no one self-spins, and if he can just run a decent last couple of laps, and he'll end up in victory lane.
So, don't expect it, but let's speculate it anyway. If a caution comes out, most drivers still have that extra set on pit lane. I mean, I'm looking right now at the lap times compared to fastest laps, about roughly a second and a half. I mean, I would assume if you've got an extra set of tires on pit road, you come down and take them, especially with there being only 3 trucks on the lead lap.
Well, with David Santini's case, I mentioned it earlier, when he topped off on fuel, he took a set of tires. So he took his last set of tires on that green flag pit stop. So both Waldrip and Canova, they have another set of tires if a caution would come out, but Santini does not. So if a caution were to come out, Santini will not win this race, Seth.
So the last thing that Santini wants to hear over his spotter scanner is the caution flag is out. He wants to make these be the fastest 5 laps he possibly can, at least get around and see the flagman in the flag stand waving the white flag over the hood of his Chevy Silverado. 4 laps to go, 6 miles left here at Kansas Speedway.
Couple of laps remaining for the number 12 of Santini. David Santini has ran a phenomenal race, able to get through that incident early with Billy Fitzgerald and most of the rest of the field, and has been looking pretty most of the race, him and Canova. And after Canova's mistake, he's really taken on this lead, and he's looking to get to victory lane for the first time.
Dylan Canova still there in that 2nd spot. Looks like he's not really pushing it nearly as much as he was in the early going, might be kind of throwing up his hands, realizing he's not going to have the time to be able to get up there and battle for this victory. Needs a caution if he's going to have a shot, and it's going to have to happen sooner rather than later, as Santini next time by would hit 2 to go. And again, a very consistent run here tonight, able to avoid that big wreck in the early going for Chuck Waldrop, in line for what would be his second top 5, but his first podium here in the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series. And again, as we mentioned too, going to gain some very, very important points in the playoffs. This will leapfrog him tonight from below the cut line, more than likely up into at least the 3rd seed, maybe even the 2nd seed, depending on how the points fall.
We're going to see what happens with Waldrop in the points, but a good points night for the number 7 machine, who he's really going to help his effort to get into the championship 4.
White flag displayed for David Santini, so we're running back to the checkers. We will not have this race end with overtime. David Santini has been on target here tonight, has had one of the steadiest looking trucks on the short and the long run. It has translated to tremendous consistent speed, and finally through 3 and 4 runs the middle line way away from that safer barrier. He's going to bring it out of turn 4 for the final time, kind of coast it down here a bit to the start-finish line. It's his first career win in the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series, and it takes place tonight at Kansas.
David Santini is going to win Kansas. Canova is going to get real close here because of him going real slow off the corner, but Santini gets the victory. Canova cutting through the grass in front of him. What a move from 47.
I think he tried to maybe cut as close as he could there to make it a photo finish. We know he can dirt track it already, and so he decided to show his off-road prowess to use there through the infield grass.
And it might have looked easy on paper for Santini. Oh, he led a good amount of laps. There's only 9 cars in the race. Only 3 of them had a car capable of winning the race with not having any damage. But it was anything but easy. Him and Canova were going back and forth the whole race. And if it wasn't because of Canova's mistake coming onto pit road, we could possibly see a different driver in victory lane here tonight.
Oh, no doubt. Dylan Canova keeping David Santini honest here this evening, and I'll tell you personally, would have loved to have seen the two duke it out here. I know that obviously, to err is human, and no mistake there by Canova cost us the opportunity of seeing who was going to be the better truck with that checkered flag on the line, but boy, kind of a 50-50 of who it was going to be if the two had executed the pit stop perfectly, and would have more than likely been in the same vicinity here, both trying to pick up their first checkered flag of the season. But Santini now makes his way back around here to the start-finish line in front of these Kansas fans, and for the first time in his MSRA Truck Series career, he's going to get to burn it down here tonight under the lights at the Kansas Speedway. A job well done here for David Santini, only his second start of the season and his second straight podium finish in as many starts.
Just drove really slow around the racetrack, and he's now set it down at pit road, and I'm not pit road, at the start-finish line. Very interesting celebration from this driver here.
I'm going to take a shortcut through the grass here. And he will head for pit road. Maybe for victory lane here. Might be heading over, towards the infield. And, well, guess you can't get into the infield here.
Most tracks on iRacing, unfortunately, you cannot get into the infield. I would love for iRacing to add that, though, because that would be a really cool feature to this simulation.
Looks like he's going to try again here. Nope, denied. So as he continues to try and find his way into the infield, let's show you the finishing results from this evening's race. Only 9 drivers in the field here tonight. Only 5 of them reached the conclusion, and only 3 of them were on the lead lap. Santini, Canova, Waldrop. We'll be talking with them in just a few moments. Matt Knight brings it home 2 laps down. In the 4th position, Robert Shin. multiple laps down, but a top 5 run for that playoff driver. Billy Fitzgerald, he did get back out onto the racetrack, logged a few more laps, but then came to pit road and ended the day on pit lane in 6th. And then Evan Longacre, Wesley Jeanette, Christopher Hill finishing 7th, 8th, and 9th. Those drivers were, I believe they all retired from the race on the same lap, but it basically, I believe, is scored on who makes it the furthest on the racetrack, whether it be a pit stall or just in terms of distance on the racetrack as to who gets scored where. So Longacre ahead of Jeanette, ahead of Christopher Hill. But again, in the case of Christopher Hill, still going to get some stage points here tonight, despite not even making it to the completion of the first stage. So it will be interesting to see, with there being 6 positions difference between himself and Waldrop, did Hill have enough points accumulated here tonight? Did Waldrop have enough points accumulated here tonight to bypass both Andrew Navarro and Boyd Hogan, who finished 1st and 2nd last week? And if that's the case, which one of the two is going to be in the number 1 seed when we get to Bristol Dirt next week?
The points are going to be a little jumbled up leaving this event after Christopher Hill wrecking out and a couple of those drivers not showing up. So, yeah, I'm interested as well to see what the points are looking like next week heading into Bristol Dirt, where I bet they'll get shuffled again, Seth.
Certainly expecting that, as we'll wait and see if we can talk with any of our top 3 finishers here. I believe that Chuck Waldrop, he's out there trying to find a way to victory lane through the infield along with David Santini. So we will talk with him in just a minute. Actually, I believe now we do actually have him on standby. So let's talk with the driver that gets his first podium finish of the season here tonight. And in terms of the playoffs, it may be very important points accumulated this evening at the Kansas Speedway.
That would have been.
Hey, David, it's Kyle and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got a copy? I will give it another try here. David, it's the guys up here in the FRM booth. You got a copy, buddy?
You brought Chuck up, Seth.
Yeah, this is Chuck.
Oh, yeah, okay, that's who I meant to bring up. My apologies. Chuck. Tonight certainly took an entirely different turn than what we were expecting. We saw a lot of lap times of very close proximity in practice, very close in qualifying. Next thing we know, we turn around, we look after 3 laps, and half the field is gone. But you had an amazing avoidance there out of turn 4 to be able to get through with no damage, spent the entire night up inside of the podium. We were talking about the fact that when we were midway through the regular season, you were fighting to make your way up inside the playoffs. Now you're up there inside of the Final Four above the cut line. So, this playoffs has definitely turned in a good direction for you. Obviously, tonight, strong run. What were some of the things that you were having to deal with that truck?
I was fighting the truck the entire night, and I had trouble with the setup before I started. So, I was just kind of hanging around in the back, and I know my truck gets loose at the start, and I was kind of anticipating somebody potentially getting loose at the start, and sure enough, it happened right in front of me. So I was able to just have a little luck getting through all that, and then for the rest of the night, I kind of fought it. They couldn't get back to them. I tried everything. I ran the tape all the way up, as fast as much as I thought I could, and still couldn't get to them. So.
Now we saw you come down pit road, top off the fuel tank there at the end of that first stage. Was there some kind of strategy that was coming into play there? What was the scenario you were looking for with getting that extra lap of fuel?
Well, I was looking at it, and I thought, well, it's going to be close on fuel, and I guess the guys were able to lift a whole lot. I knew they were running all out, and so they were able to lift a little bit when they got separated. I think one of them spun coming off pit road after that mid-race pit stop, and that caused them to get separated. So I think at that point they kind of slowed the pace a little bit and started lifting, and they were able to save fuel. But my strategy there was, why not? I could come in, grab some fuel, and I for sure had enough to make it. but I just didn't have the truck tonight.
Yeah, we've seen here to start off the playoffs two races that have definitely played their part into causing issues for some of the playoff contenders. Saw about half of the playoff drivers have problems last week at Darlington. Here tonight, a couple of playoff drivers caught up in that early incident. Next week, we head to Bristol, Bristol Dirt. I mean, what's the expectations? Is there any apprehension? Is there excitement going into that race next week?
Um, I'm not too good on dirt, so it's not going to be good for me. But I'm just going to try to keep it clean and make it through it on next week.
Well, Chuck, a great run for you here tonight. First podium of the season for you in that 7 truck. Congratulations. And now we'll give you the opportunity to thank some sponsors and do some shout outs.
Yeah, I'd like to thank the guys over at Thin Line, Matt Knight and the guys. They really helped me out on letting me run with these guys this year, and that's pretty much it.
Chuck Waldrop's your third place finisher here tonight under the lights at the Kansas Speedway. Once again, congratulations on the great run. Good luck next week at Bristol Dirt as you continue to try and keep yourself up there above that cut line in this season's playoffs.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
And let's see if we can get our second place driver and see if I can actually say the correct name of the person that we
There you
talked
go.
to. Let's see if we can get our second place finisher. That would be, of course, Dylan Canova. Dylan, it's Kyle and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got a copy?
Yeah, I got you.
Man, I'll tell you what, we saw a great back and forth race here tonight between yourself and that 12 of David Santini. Pretty much figured it was going to come down between you two for that checkered flag, but pit road here tonight appeared to be the difference maker. I mean, obviously there's got to be some disappointment, but how encouraged are you out of the speed you had in this 47 truck? Because you were fast on the bottom, fast on the top. Even there were a couple times that we thought you were going to loop that thing around through the center of the corner, and Larson held on to it and kept that speed going.
Yeah, I was trying to make the most of the night, with what happened early, and I knew the truck would be fast. It was fast yesterday when I was practicing with it, so figured it was fast, loose. Made a couple adjustments, just tried to see if I could make it last a little bit longer in the long run. And I didn't realize I was about out of fuel. I wasn't going to make that lap, so I tried to cut it down the pit road in time, and it just looped on me.
Now, we saw that obviously here tonight you could run the bottom, you could run the top. We noticed that you guys would start migrating up a couple of lanes as the run went on. I mean, where was the optimal line to be able to run, and when did you have to run it? Like, when was the point you absolutely had to run up against the outside wall? Because we had a lot of green flag runs here tonight.
I would say you could run the bottom pretty good for about 20 laps. After about 20 laps, you started having to work your way up, and it was basically a transition. As soon as you went to the top, it was all the way. You never really ran the middle. But about 20 laps. Every now and then you could, if you had to make a move, you could kind of run the bottom, but it would just get too free in the center.
Now, like we said, it was really impressive when we were watching you be able to wheel that thing around, getting really loose on certain occasions, especially when we started getting around that lap 20, lap 25 run. We were tossing this back and forth. We're going to go right to the source and ask you as the driver. You had a couple of opportunities to come to pit road. You had the stage caution. You had that pit stop there during the first stage. Were there any adjustments that were made? Did you tighten that thing up just a little bit, or did you keep it exactly the way it was for each run?
Oh, I definitely tightened it up. I made a couple of spring perch adjustments on both the first two pit stops. The last pit stop, I left it alone. I felt like I could at least hold off David on the long run, and that was basically the goal. And it really didn't matter once I looped it coming to pit road.
Well, still a lot of speed shown off here tonight in that 47 Chevy Silverado. Dylan, congratulations on a great performance overall. A solid second place run here this evening as well. And now we'll give you the opportunity to do some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
I was going to thank Matt Knight and everybody over at Thin Line Racing for letting me run their truck tonight. And EPI made a great setup. And, just everybody that puts this on, you guys for broadcasting. I know, can only imagine it was a long night after the beginning.
Well, Dylan Canova brings it home with a strong runner-up finish here this evening under the lights at Kansas Speedway. Congratulations once again on a job well done. and well-deserved second place finish.
Thank you.
And let's see if we can now go down to victory lane. First win of his MSRA Reaper Speedlab Truck Series career. Let's talk with David Santini. Hey David, Kyle, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. Got a copy?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Well, man, I mean, we're talking to you in victory lane now. Apparently, you had to walk your way over there. We saw that the track boundaries wouldn't let you drive back there. But man, I'll tell you what, had to earn it here tonight. You and that 47 crossing each other over, slide jobbing, trying to figure out which lane the other one was going to run to try and get the clean air to the nose. Came down to that final pit stop, but I mean, man, how difficult was it here tonight to be able to get the race lead, keep the race lead?
Well, it would have been a little bit more fun if there was more cars out there. Unfortunately, we had the early incident there, but no, I mean it was, even though it was just me and Dylan most of the time up front, it was still fun because you had to pick and choose your lines, see what was fast, and the low line was definitely fastest early on. I hadn't practiced a whole lot in the trucks coming up to this race, so I really didn't know where you were supposed to run with them. So, like I said, it was kind of a learning curve for me for the whole race, just trying to figure out where we were going to be. Unfortunately, Dylan had his accident there too on pit lane. I think it would have been a pretty fun race to the finish there, though, had that not happened.
One of the cool things about having drivers up here that finish in the podium is you kind of speculate what a driver is doing, and then you get to ask them directly. You talked about that incident with Canova on pit road. All of a sudden, it's just you out there logging laps. At that point in time, what are you doing? What are you focused on at that point, knowing that you don't have to battle for the win?
Just not messing up or hitting the wall. That's pretty much it. I mean, you don't really have to save a whole lot because I mean these are pretty much flat out. I mean you lift a tiny bit into the corner maybe, or I guess you can save, but it's not like you're giving up a tenth or two a lap. So I mean you're pretty much just running your line and just don't mess up, don't get loose, and don't get tight and hit the wall. I mean that's about it. Just run mistake free and you're off to the win.
The longest run we saw you guys have here tonight was that 40-lap stint once you guys went green for stage 2. Looked at the lap times, we were looking roughly about anywhere from a tenth and a half to maybe two, or a second and a half to maybe 2 seconds difference from fresh tires to those old tires. I mean, what did you feel as far as changes in the truck as those tires worn down, or was it just basically the loss of speed was mostly what you felt?
For the set that I was running, it definitely was really good on the bottom early on. Very, I guess you could say loose, but a very controllable loose. 20 laps in, it kind of tightened up just a touch. And then I'm not even sure when I was going to the top, maybe like 25 laps in, then I could go to the top and make up a little bit of time up there. It was just losing too much time on the bottom. As far as Dylan goes, though, he had a really fast car short run. I mean, he could definitely stay out in front. Once my car transitioned to the top, though, I think it was better as far as the long run speed there, though.
Well, David, we talked about the fact that we talked to you in Victory Lane several times back when we broadcasted the Rapid Fire Pizza National Series. Been a while, but we're now handing the mic over to you here tonight for some Victory Lane. Thank you, sponsors and shoutouts.
Yeah, no, it's good to be up here with you guys again. You guys are a lot of fun. Big shout out to Reaper Speedlab, of course. Everybody over at OSN. Everybody that runs our league as well. And then, of course, you guys for putting on these great broadcasts every week.
David Santini, strong performance here tonight, picks up the victory at the Kansas Speedway. Congratulations once again. Go and enjoy this victory.
Yep, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
So as David Santini continues his celebration here tonight with the checkered flag captured at the Kansas Speedway, that brings our conclusion of our broadcast here for the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series. So far, here in the playoffs, Kyle, we've had a playoff contender and Andrew Navarro go to victory lane in the playoff opener at Darlington. Non-playoff driver and Santini go to victory lane here tonight. And again, the big question mark we have now is with quite a number of our drivers up there above the cut line, not in the race here tonight, not getting points. A lot of drivers either around the cut line or below the cut line making starts here tonight. What is that outlook going to look like for Bristol next week?
It's really anybody's guess, especially without having very many people here tonight. We could have maybe 15, 20 guys show up next week, or we could have a small field like we did today. We could have 5 to 10 guys. It just really just depends on who wants to come out and show up for Bristol Dirt, because Bristol Dirt should be a interesting one to say the least, and could possibly take a big hit on the playoff points.
Absolutely going to be the first time we'll get to see the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series drivers on the dirt surface. We didn't get to see them back at Knoxville, so should be a lot of fun. Hope you guys will join us for that next Wednesday night, September 14th, with the green flag scheduled to fly at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Do not miss it. Kyle, it's been a great one here tonight. Saw some great battling for the lead. Unfortunately, didn't get to see that battle all the way to the checkered flag. Some varying strategies, and then, of course, bit of survival for some drivers in the early stages, but an exciting Kansas race here tonight. Appreciate you joining me in the booth.
Yeah, it was a great battle between Canova and Santini all race long, and Santini in the number 12 was able to take the race home, able to get the victory, and Waldrop with a very key top 3. And now, like you said, Seth, we're looking forward to Bristol Dirt, and that should be a interesting one next week as we continue the Reaper Speedlab Truck Series race to the championship.
Absolutely. Going to be a good one here as we continue on the playoffs, and we hope you guys will join us every step of the way. But for Kyle Lawrence, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday night, folks. You've been watching another broadcast courtesy of FRN, the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.